Trump's already said that he can run the country and run his business at the same time. President-elect has also said that presidents can have conflicts of interest. But a whole lot of people are worried that a Trump White House will have a slew of them. He's got business interests in several countries and will be dealing with those leaders. And also, his children will be running the businesses on a day-to-day basis, but will also have their father's ear. Perhaps they'll even be sitting in on some of those meetings, just like Ivanka did with the Prime Minister of Japan. Here to help us untangle it all is Rick Ungar. He's host of Steele and Ungar on Sirius XM POTUS channel, and he's also the senior contributor at Forbes.com. Thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Richard.
And first of all, none of this is hypothetical here. It was funny going through, and I thought the Times did a great piece this weekend. Trump acknowledged that he had conflicts of interest last year in an interview with Steve Bannon, now his White House counselor. He also said, yeah, there could be conflicts of interest with his hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue with folks who are trying to get obviously favorable relations with the United States, who may take suites here or even floors on the hotel to get maybe a better arrangement. So he's acknowledged it exists. The question I have is he right in terms of letter and spirit that presidents can have conflicts of interest? Applies to everybody else, but it doesn't apply to them?
Well, you put it a really interesting way when you say letter and spirit. By the letter of the law, yeah, he really is right. By the spirit of the law, not so much. This has been dealt with time and time again in the past, primarily by using blind trust. If not blind trust, just getting rid of the assets. This is a tricky thing. Trump could create an entire department to do nothing but deal with these conflicts. I honestly don't know how he resolves some of them. Most of his assets, as you know, are in real estate. Well, you can't just put all your real estate on the market and A, expect it to sell, and B, expect it to sell at anything that's not a fire sale, because people would know he has to sell them. So there's some sympathy there. On the other hand, he knew he was running for president. He should have known that there was a possibility he could win and that these conflicts would be very serious indeed.
And Rick, I don't know about you, but for me, even more concerning than the stuff we know about. For example, even the simple conversation he had, with concerns over some of those Scottish wind farms here and trying to get Parliament maybe to get a favorable ruling. He acknowledged as much, is what we don't know. It's widely believed that he's got tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in debt in foreign banks. It never made any sense for me why he was the biggest apologist for Putin. There's not a huge Russian electorate here that he's trying to really help swing the election this past November. So who knows what oligarchs or whatever else. And I'm not wearing a tinfoil hat when I say that. My question is,
no, you're not.
We don't have the returns, and to me, this is what would have probably gave us the most amount of transparency. And in absence of that, that's what I think should be a bigger consideration for the public than is Donnie Jr. and Eric trying to curry favor with the Indian premier or somebody in the Philippines, or you name the hot spot around the globe. It's what we don't know, I think, that we should be most worried about.
I think that's clearly true, particularly when you reasonably speculate, and there's reason to believe that there's a fairly sizable amount of debt sitting in Russian banks. There are banks that have government, either owned by governments or have solid relationships with foreign governments that you know are holding mortgage interests in Trump properties. Now, there's nothing wrong with that per se, but it becomes very, very dicey when that person becomes president of the United States. The tax returns could, and I'd emphasize could, have shed some light on some of these, depending on what tax returns we got. I think most of this would be in his corporate tax returns, not his personal tax returns, and that's what we were clamoring to see and never saw. I don't know that you can find out some of these things that you're correctly pointing to. I just don't know if it's doable. And in the same way that it would be difficult for people to find out where my home mortgage is. It's not readily apparent. You could do title searches, whatever, but this is a big, big issue.
Okay, now let's say the president, fine, he's exempt, as he's already said, you can't touch me. Doesn't apply to the kids, especially those dealing with foreign investment properties. Explain the emoluments clause in how, whether they think it doesn't matter or not, this could bite them you-know-where time after time.
Well, you know what? The Trump administration is going to become very familiar, particularly the in-house White House counsel, with the emoluments clause, because nobody can recall a time when it has been used in this way. It's going to be very, very odd to try and determine whether or not the president is financially benefiting, which is what the Constitution prohibits, if he's in some way benefiting from decisions he makes theoretically on behalf of the nation. This is why, you know, Peggy Noonan, who I rarely agree with, kind of got it right in her column this past weekend when she said, you know what, Mr. President, time for you to move on from being a businessman, and it's time to move into being a patriot. Just sell everything. Problem is, that's not so easy to do.
There was an idea floated by Andrew Ross Sorkin where he said, you know what, how about a corporate monitor? Bring somebody from the outside, give at least the veil of transparency here and say, I'll take a look at it. I'll be the good government cop here at the same time, making sure one hand isn't putting, you know, money in the other pocket. Is that something he could do?
Well, he can if he wants to kind of, you know, if I can use the word, screw over his kids, because his kids are not going to like being employed for the next 4 or 8 years by a corporate trustee. I mean, what you're talking about here is a situation that you might find in a bankruptcy, where the court assigns a trustee to take over the assets. Kids aren't going to like that, and it's not hard to understand why they wouldn't. They've been a critical part of the business.
Finally, I think, and maybe this is just me being Pollyannish again, I think this is going to be a huge story. Stuff that we can't imagine right now in the next few years. Certainly I've been proven wrong before in the last 6 months, but this time I think people get it. They've never seen a president. Maybe they think somebody's, you know, a crook, or maybe they think somebody's got the morals of a toilet, but they have never seen somebody using the office here to basically be an ATM. If they get that vibe, I think, and his track record says he'll do it, I think this one will dog him. Do you think I'm wrong?
Well, no, you could be very right, and he's worried you're right. And I say that because every time this issue has gained a little steam, certainly last week, you've seen a Trump tweet that is designed to get the media's attention on something else. Right, the millions of people he says were involved with voter fraud. He just doesn't want us to talk about exactly what you and I are talking about. And you're going to continue to see that at least until he's in the White House, and this will form the basis of an ongoing attack in the same way that Republicans kept ongoing attack against President Obama. Look, Trump was one of the leaders. The whole birther thing was just the kind of distraction that this is likely to turn out to be, the difference being that this is very real.
Absolutely. Great stuff. I appreciate a few minutes, Rick. Thank you.
Pleasure, man.
Coming up next, Trump, a billionaire who likes to certainly show the money around here. So why does he appeal to so many people who are struggling, especially after he started talking about tax breaks for other rich folks? Some amazing poll numbers and also amazing storylines right straight ahead.